Everyone has a story to tell. It's my mission to tell it. Unscripted, unedited, we are on the record.
Hi everyone, I'm Serena Fazan and welcome to this episode of On the Record. Today a very important topic, your workplace rights. We've certainly seen so many things change since the pandemic hit this country. So who do we turn to? Some incredible, strong women, my all-star panel. Attorneys Cynthia Sass, hello, Yvette Everhart, and Amanda Biondolino. Did I do a good job with the names?
Yes.
Okay. I love these guys. So Cynthia, let's start with you. It's your law firm. Just tell us a little bit about your law firm and your area of expertise.
Okay, so I practice employment law and we represent individuals and we are all women. There's 6 attorneys, right? Or
5 attorneys.
5, I get that mixed up. There's 6. There's 5 attorneys, all women, and we specialize in just representing individuals. I've been doing it for almost 30 years.
Wow, congratulations.
And I was probably one of the first people to go out and represent individuals in Florida full-time. I used to represent companies, but then I turned to representing individuals.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so the part of the series is inspiring women and just incredible stories from you guys. When you hear what Cynthia says, Amanda and Yvette, and I know you work at the law firm, what are you thinking at this point when you hear her history?
It doesn't surprise me at all because that's just her personality. She's a real go-getter, so absolutely.
And I'd say she's like who I aspire to be because that's what I want to do is dedicate my career to helping individuals as well.
And why do you think, and we're going to get to workplace rights, of course, but I feel it's very important to have incredible women setting examples. Would you, of course you would agree with that, I would imagine. And why is it so important?
Well, I think it's just important. Women are underrepresented, and so as more and more women, I mean, there are a lot of women in the workforce. They certainly can move on up as now as women are getting more help from men and men are taking on more caregiving responsibilities. Women are able to spend more time on their careers. There's just a lot of opportunity for women in the workforce now, and along with it comes, they need to know their rights as well so that they're protected.
That's so interesting because of course we're talking about men and women and their workplace rights. But Cynthia, you've been in this industry now, as you said, for 30 years. Have you seen more and more women in the workplace?
I have seen more and more women in the workplace. And talking about attorneys, when I started, there weren't a lot of females that had their own firm. So when I was doing that, I would go to the court, do a deposition, and they would think I was the court reporter, not the attorney. But I can say that there were a lot of men in my career that actually helped me move along too. So I had women, but also men. So I was very lucky that way.
See, and we're so blessed, I think, with the great community, right? So you need to reach out, ask your community for help, and help will come. But on that note, so now let's talk about workplace rights. And let's start with you, Cynthia. Have you seen, since the pandemic hit this country, workplace rights, to me anyway, they seem more important than ever.
Well, I think since the pandemic, what's happened is employers have realized that people can work remotely. So that's one big change that has happened. So a lot of the employees are working remotely, and now the employers are struggling with whether the employees can come back to work or not, or should come back to work. So that's one issue that I see that's happening.
So let the other 2 attorneys weigh in too. So that's what you guys have been seeing. The one question that I get from a lot of people do you feel that people are just as effective at home as they are in the workplace?
I would say absolutely. I think it really depends on the person and their personality type. Some people really crave that interaction with their coworkers and need that in order to keep them moving along. Other people, like I know myself, I can get so much more done being at home in my working environment, even with distractions of children and animals and all of those things. I feel like I'm more efficient, more productive in that space, in that setting, than I am when I go into the office, because it ends up being more social, and we end up talking a lot, and we do corroborate on things and have conferences and stuff, but it just allows you to really hone in on what you need to get done and finish it.
And this is coming from, guys, a mother of 3, and your kids are how old? They're little.
Yeah, almost 11, 8, and 4.
But still, as you said, you feel that you are more productive at home. So Amanda, how about you? Like, how? Because I know right now a lot of employers, for instance, before they hire someone, people are asking even to work remotely. So how does the person applying for the job, and how does the boss handle that type of question?
Well, I think every situation is different and every employee can be different. And so it really is a conversation that needs to be had. And I think the employer needs to really look at the job and say, is this something that can be done at home? I think employees need to understand, where are they more productive and can they get the work done? I think it's every job is kind of different. So it's really a conversation that needs to take place. But I do think now that we've learned, a lot of jobs pivoted that prior to this said they absolutely could not do remote work. And we've seen that they can do remote work. So it's definitely a consideration that needs to be looked into.
So Cynthia, let me ask you this question
Right.
then. Does someone who's seeking a job then have the absolute right to now say, hey, I would like to present a hybrid opportunity or, a hybrid position to you? Can you ask your boss that question?
You can ask your boss that question. Do you have the absolute right? No, you don't have the absolute right. Now, if you had like a disability or some situation that you should be working from home, you could ask your boss and say, I need that as an accommodation to be able to work. Like, let's say you need to, if you have, let's say you have cancer and you're getting cancer treatments, and it would be better to be at home when you're getting the treatments, but you could still work. You could say to your boss, can I work from home? I have cancer. And under the Americans with Disabilities Act, they'd have to engage in what's called the interactive process and have a discussion as to whether that's a reasonable accommodation or not. And if an essential function of the job is really not being at work, then your boss should, if they're covered by the Americans with Disabilities Act, allow you to work from home. But generally, you don't have the right to say, I want to work at home. But what employees have realized after the pandemic is, they don't have to take a job. There's been a mass exodus where people are resigning, like, okay, you're not going to let me work from home, then I'm not going to work for you. So I think employers are realizing that employees do have some leverage because there's hard times now finding employees. So you got to balance that and look at that.
So let's talk about that a little bit more, because I know I hear it from this side how hard it is to find employees. And why don't you guys expand on that as well about, I guess, employees having more leverage now? Is that one of the principal reasons, would you say?
I think it's partly the reason, and employees have now realized their worth, even being able to work from home, and can share that. But I think the other part of the reason is some of the things that came out of the pandemic, vaccination requirements and things of that nature, that there are some employees that will not, do not want to go work at a job where they're being required to get a vaccine or what have you. So that is then causing them to say, hey, I'm not going there. I want to go somewhere where I'm able to make the choice, or I'm going to work from home. So that's what I think I have seen a lot, where the employees are just making that choice, either because they know they have that bargaining power to do that, or they don't want these other things to impede on their ability to make choices.
And I think not every employee has this bargaining power. I mean, I do think it's a power that comes as you move up the hierarchy of, from blue collar to white collar, if it's executive, depending on the job. Not everybody has that type of, leverage.
Yeah.
So those that do, it's good for them to, understand that, take advantage of that, become the best employee they can, the most productive employee they can. But not everybody does have that opportunity.
It's really interesting too, though, about the vaccinations, because I know, a lot of people, when it comes to their medical care, of course, have very strong opinions. So what are your rights? What are your basic workplace rights?
Well, with a vaccination, an employer can require you to have a vaccination, but if they do, and you have a religious reason that you're not taking the vaccination, or you have a medical condition, then your employer has to see whether they can accommodate that condition or that religious belief. So those are exceptions to requiring a vaccine, and Florida also has a law that there's certain criteria if you're going to require a vaccine that you're going to have to follow.
So do you feel, especially now though, people are more cognitive, or they're paying more attention to what their rights are in the workplace? Have you seen that post-pandemic?
Well, our firm, we get a lot of calls where people don't want to take the vaccine and they want to know what their rights are. So I think people are reaching out and surfing the internet to see what their rights are, but I do think people are looking at that because a lot of people feel so strongly about the vaccine that they want to make sure that they're in the right position to be able to make a decision on their employment.
You know, I love this show because it's unedited, unscripted, and we talk about the issues in front of us right now. What other type of calls are you getting? What do you think are the more important issues right now?
Well, I think a lot of people are asserting their rights. Just kind of touch on this last topic about the vaccine. It's a hot topic right now. I think a lot of employees don't understand what their rights are in the workplace, and they take a lot of illegal treatment from their employers. They don't understand. They don't understand how they should be getting paid. They don't understand, that they shouldn't be getting retaliated against if they're reporting, violations of law, or if they're complaining of discrimination. They don't understand their rights. And hopefully if something happens to them, they do seek legal counsel before it's too late, because there's timelines that are running that people aren't aware of either. They're not aware of that at all. And then they're losing their rights. They're expiring before they even are aware that they have a cause of action or that they have a right to enforce. But other than the vaccines, we see a lot of non-compete cases, which are unfortunate cases of employees who are unable to get another job once they leave an employer in their field. And there's varying levels of how strict the requirements their former employer has put on them that they probably agreed to when they got that job without thinking twice. And now when they're looking for another job, even if their employer fired them, now they have these restrictions on what they can do. And then they come to us or other lawyers to help them through that. That's a common issue that we see.
How frustrating too, especially since you're, if you're great at your field and there's probably limited jobs in that field and you don't want to leave. So you guys are seeing that. So you're seeing non-compete. We're getting questions about the vaccinations. And Amanda, when you were talking about expirations, I know every case is different, but can you weigh in on how much time people may have?
Well, it's going to depend, which is probably the lawyerly answer, right? Really, if someone has a legal claim for discrimination or retaliation based on, some type of federal or state law, in Florida, we typically advise clients that, look, you have a window of 300 days, essentially, if you feel like you're being discriminated against based on a protected characteristic, to exhaust an administrative remedy, which most people don't really understand what that means, but it's, there's a federal agency or there's a state level agency that you have to file that charge with and make that complaint. And those deadlines don't move generally. I mean, if you got terminated, you're going to have 300 days. Otherwise, that as exhausted. Florida goes the extra step under state law to give plaintiffs with employment discrimination and retaliation matters 365 days. So unfortunately, sometimes you see people who have been enduring what they view as a hostile working environment or harassment for far too long. And so you really have to make sure that they're getting it out and it's aware that these things, you can't just sit around and wait sometimes. But then there's a whole other different realm of legal claims where you don't have to exhaust administrative rights. Things like if someone's taken a medical leave under the Family and Medical Leave Act, if they're being retaliated against or the employer has somehow interfered with those rights, they get as long as 2 years to bring that claim, maybe even 3 if you can show that it was a willful violation by the employer. Other claims like for unpaid wages, which we see a lot, people are like, I'm owed this money from my employer. generally, they're going to potentially have 2 years, maybe 3 years, depending on if it falls under federal law or state law, and what the basis of the recovery is. So, but then we deal a lot with federal sector employees, or you deal with state level employees, and some of those deadlines are really short. So for example, in the federal sector, if someone thinks they're being discriminated against based on age, for example, they only have 45 days.
That's it?
That's it. 45 days to make contact with their employer and say, I think I'm being discriminated against, through a special office, and have them investigate it. If they don't, it's gone.
Gosh, and and that's so troubling, because you might be going through like PTSD, for lack of a better term, that you love your job, and don't even realize, like, you have to come to terms with it, and not knowing you have that many days.
Yeah, it's pretty short.
Gosh.
It's very short, and I think sometimes we do see clients when we have to tell them, I'm sorry, but for whatever reason, you had legitimate reasons to wait, but unfortunately the time has passed.
Oh my gosh. So Cynthia, let me ask you, do you feel, and I know Yvette just said that Florida is, we have added the 65 days on some of the expirations. Do you think that Florida is a great state when it comes to, do we do a good job? Do we do a good job protecting employees? I guess is what I'm trying to say. Do we do a good job?
No, I don't think so. I'm sorry to say, what we do is really hard, because there's not that many protections for employees. So I don't think Florida has great laws for protecting employees. Generally, employees don't realize, but what you're employed at is at will. And generally, unless you have like a union that represents you, or you have an employment contract. And so what that means is an employer really can terminate you for whatever reason, a good reason, a bad reason, and just no reason they can terminate you, and you normally don't have a cause of action against your employer. So the only ways that you can bring a cause of action or have some leverage to be able to make sure you're treated right and all is if you're being terminated because of discrimination, but it's got to be recognized discrimination under federal and state law because of your gender, because of your religion, because of pregnancy, because of age. Or if you're a whistleblower, like you object or refuse to participate in illegal activity, or if you've taken FMLA leave and you're being retaliated for doing that. Those are examples. So really, it isn't great. And again, I have to emphasize the non-compete issue is a really big issue to me, because I just think it's so unfair to employees, especially management level employees. Maybe if you're at the top, and you're getting paid a lot of money, and you can maybe move around a little more or something. But I think that that law needs to change in Florida, the non-compete, though I think that people should not be able to enforce those. I think that there could be a non-solicitation, maybe, like you can't take clients that you develop while you're with your employer, but I just think it's really unfair. And, employees don't have the bargaining power, really, when they enter into an employment relationship to say, I'm not going to sign that, which if you don't sign it, you're not going to get hired, or you're going to get fired. So I don't think that employees have great rights. I mean, there are a lot of things that you're protected on, but it's very limited.
So hold that thought, because I want to discuss this further, but we're going to go to a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back.
You use maps for travel, but did you know there's mapping for your skin? It's called Visia Skin Analysis.
Above average, that's pretty good.
Here's why I used it at South Tampa Dermatology. It scans your skin for sun damage and wrinkles. You can see how your skin compares with others in your age group. Why is this important?
So here's what we'll do.
It can target a treatment program to meet your needs and save your skin over time. Another reason why I rely on the dream team at South Tampa Dermatology.
Label Swap is a retail store that you can bring in the items you don't want anymore. We will buy them for either a cash offer or store credit, and you can also shop the items as well. We carry anything from H&M, Lululemon, up to your luxury items like Gucci and Louis Vuitton. There's nothing really around like it here in the market. It is a fun, personalized experience.
Hi guys, welcome back to On the Record. I'm here with three amazing, incredible, inspiring women. Cynthia Sass with the Sass Law Firm, Yvette Everhart, and Amanda Biondolino. We are talking about workplace rights. And before the commercial break, we were talking about, Cynthia, you feel like that non-compete law really, or the non-compete rules, right, really need to change. So how do we do it? I mean, what, do we go to lawmakers? I mean, what do we do to try to get that changed?
Well, I think you've got to write your representatives and tell them that it needs to change. We need to lobby. I think writing your representatives is one of the big things. What do you guys think?
Well, I think there's actually been a number of proposed legislation to change things. One came down from President Biden, right, in an executive order. Unfortunately, so far that hasn't gone anywhere. But there has been proposed legislation in Florida. It passed with very, very small exceptions to certain types of doctors and very small, like municipalities that maybe only have one choice. But I think what Cynthia's saying is we have to really lobby. And I think, unfortunately, Florida needs to become a little bit more on the liberal side and pro-employee in order for that to really work out. California is super pro-employee. They do not recognize non-competes. So we got to maybe follow what California is doing. Whether that will actually happen is the telltale sign of whether we'll make any progress.
Amanda, are we one of the few states that have the non-compete?
I don't know exactly how many states do have non-compete laws. I know that plenty of states do enforce non-competes. Some states don't. So I don't know the proportion, but we do have a robust statute that is enforced by the courts robustly. And a lot of times, employers, they take advantage. They have the upper hand. They have the money, quite frankly. The employee is frankly out of work or maybe just started a new job, and they don't have the resources to fight this in court if they are sued. So, I mean, the statute, it really should change. And most people probably think it's the CEO who's having this work restriction on them because they know all the secrets and they got paid the big bucks. But it goes all the way down the line, and there are blue collar workers who are subjected to these, which is outrageous. And there are people who don't know the secret sauce. They don't know the secret recipe. They're just doing their jobs. And they shouldn't be restricted from getting other employment. You're supposed to have a legitimate business interest to enforce this, but what we see is that it's being over-enforced, and it really does come down to a lot of the leverage and the lack of leverage an employee has in this fight.
Well, I would encourage people in the community then that are watching the show, once again, as you said, Cynthia, write your representative. We have a lot of representatives on the show, so we have to take action for ourselves to make a difference. The three of you also talked about, my all-star panel, also talked about retaliation and discrimination, so sadly. So if you are feeling that in your workplace, what do you do to protect yourself? Do you have to start to document it?
Well, I think you should document it. You can keep contemporaneous notes of what's going on, and then you're going to have to make a decision, and it's a career choice decision, honestly, whether you're going to overtly start documenting it. Because once you start documenting, and let's say you get a performance review and you're being treated differently than someone that's not in your protected classification, let's say you're black and then your coworker's white, and being black, you're being subjected to different terms and conditions or a higher level of performance. You could put in your performance review afterwards, I feel like I'm being treated differently and it's based on my race, and you've engaged in what's called protected activity. But when we have this conversation with our clients, but when you make that decision to do that, a lot of times employers are going to retaliate against you. And, you just need to understand that that is something that may come down the road. You'll have a claim for it and you can bring the claim, but sometimes people decide not to document it and move on. So if you make the decision that you're going to document it, the first thing is normally employers have policies in place that if you feel like you're being subjected to any discrimination, you should complain. So you should complain to HR in writing. You can put things in your performance review. When you get performance reviews, you can send emails to your manager and CC HR. And one thing that you should not do is secretly record conversations, even though that would probably document the best. In Florida, it's illegal to record someone when you don't have two-party consent.
And that's very important. Believe me, as a journalist, I know that. And it's inadmissible, and they could get into trouble.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it's illegal.
So,
and we see clients who do that, and they don't do it intentionally, and they think it's great, and it may have the smoking gun in it, but it's an illegal thing you shouldn't be doing. Okay,
so that's
well, and I think it's easier now for employees to do that because of the technology, right? We can put our cell phone down and just hit record, and just looks like it's a cell phone sitting there, and or people get really bad advice, like, oh yeah, my cousin who's a union rep in another state said, yeah, I can do it, and I'm like, no, like,
not in
please don't do that.
No, you can't do it.
I mean, there are ways to do it. I think there's ways to do it safely. The problem is you may not always 100% realize the retaliation immediately, and it'll be very subtle over time, and it can be a series of events. And so, sometimes you want to say if it feels like retaliation, it might be retaliation, and you have to make that choice because you can't unring that bell, like Cynthia said. And so, it depends really on what industry you work at, whether it's really going to be a career ender. For some, it totally would be. For others, maybe not, because they work in very large industries that, not everybody knows everybody, to be able to then go back and say, oh, this person blew the whistle, or this person, filed a discrimination claim. But, document, keep good notes. Don't take company documents is the other big one. Lots of people feel like they want to download the hard drive or download their emails because they can, because they have access to it. And I would tell you, don't do that unless,
It's company's property.
It's company property. If it's something about your own performance, like your performance evaluations, or information about your pay, generally those types of things are going to be okay. But it's one of those, if it potentially has client information or company information that they wouldn't want their competitors or anyone else in the public to know, don't take it. Keep a log of those documents. Write it down, what it is, where it exists. Make a folder on your computer so that if something should arise and there's a legal claim, we can say, you need to preserve it. It's in this folder right here. Make sure you don't destroy it.
So take great personal notes. So before, I want to touch on another aspect before we wrap up the show, and that's the 1099 worker. And Amanda, I can let you start with this because I think we are seeing more. Is it my imagination? Or are we seeing more and more 1099 workers? And for people who don't know, what is a 1099 worker?
Well, sometimes they're called 1099 workers or independent contractors. But the company doesn't consider them an employee. And sometimes the independent contractor at the time is willing to call themselves an independent contractor. They write it in their agreement that they're an independent contractor. But and there's various tests, but if the company controls the employees, the independent contractors, work and gives them all the tools they need, it comes down really to control. They really are an employee, not an independent contractor. And the issue is when you're labeled an independent contractor, you're shouldering all the tax liability and your employer's getting off scot-free. Your employer is not paying their fair share of the employment taxes. Your employer doesn't have the workers' comp coverage for you. There's a whole slew of issues that come with being designated a 1099. So I think it's always been a problem. I don't know that if it's worse now than before, but it is a huge problem, and it's called misclassification, employees being misclassified. And a lot of times we see them designated as a 1099. They should be an employee and entitled to all those rights, entitled to the protection of laws for employees that you're not entitled to as an independent contractor. And so then that adds an additional level of, fight that needs to be fought to prove they're an employee, in addition to, say, discrimination, retaliation, or to get them paid properly.
And Cynthia, you were about to say something.
Well, I was just going to say, from my perspective, it does seem like there's a lot more people being classified as independent contractors because it is cheaper for the employer and it's a lot more flexible. And I've seen where employees, have blown the whistle and they're called independent contractors, and they don't have any legal rights if they're really independent contractors under most of the employment laws, like in Florida. Or if you're being treated differently because you're female, you're not gonna, if you're an independent contractor, like Amanda's saying, you don't have those rights to assert because you're an independent contractor. If you're not being paid properly, like under the Fair Labor Standards Act, where you've got to be paid minimum wage and overtime, if you're classified as an independent contractor and you're found to be that, you're not covered under those laws. So I think that is a big problem that, I think in the future, our laws are going to change probably to include independent contractors, but right now they're not. So, if you're an independent contractor, you need to understand that you don't have those protections.
What are the advantages of being an independent contractor?
Well, you have flexibility.
Right.
You have
Your schedule.
You have your schedule. You can set your own rate. If you can have like a really good employment contract as an independent contractor, you can do other jobs. So that is, and you have your own business, so that is the advantage of it. And when you have tax issues, you also can write off your expenses if you're an independent contractor. So there may be some tax advantages to you that way. If you file, now when the pandemic happened, independent contractors were covered when they got some of the COVID money. But normally when you're an independent contractor, you're not going to get unemployment, if you get fired from your employer. So, COVID, you were protected. So.
Right, very, very good point. Very good point. So if people have questions about employment and their rights, I would certainly encourage them to call you ladies. So what is the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, you can call our phone number at our office, or look us up on the website under Sass Law Firm, and we do a blog and provide individuals advice just on our website that they can look at. So I would just have them call our office.
We also have social media. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And otherwise, a Google search will find it pretty easily.
Amazing, right? Isn't it amazing? So, I have to say, like on a personal note, what a pioneer. We started, with the show, 30 years that you've been in this industry and really led it. So as we close out the show, you guys are incredible, strong females. What advice would you give to young girls out there right now? We're gonna end with you.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna clog the whole stage.
You're gonna close it.
I've got advice.
You're gonna close it.
I would just say, the world is your oyster. You have every opportunity, you have every right, and go for your dreams and claim what's yours and fight for your rights.
Love it. Yvette?
I would pretty much mimic what Amanda says, but I also would tell them to do what they love. Don't just do something because you need a job or, because your parents want you to go down a path. Do it because you love to do it, because you're going to be doing this for the rest of your life. And make sure you enjoy it, because, you're going to look back and what did I do? Oh, I was unhappy, or I spent doing this, something I didn't want to do. Or I was really good at it, but what did you affect change in your community and in your profession? Just do what you love.
So I would say that you actually can do whatever you dream you can do. And I think that, like Yvette, that Amanda said, the world is your oyster. I think you've got to do what you love, but whatever you choose to do, you need to be the best you can. And that is the key. You need to be the best person you can, the best worker you can, and you should reach out to other people, because I love helping other people. And if people call me and say, can you help me or give me advice, people will do it. And I think your connections with other people help you move ahead. So you've got to have the drive, you've got to have the love for it, you've got to work really, really hard and make sure you have good connections or find good mentors to help you. And it can be men and women that do that.
Well, which is wonderful. And the three of you are my mentors, so I really appreciate it. And I want to let the audience know, if you have a story idea, please reach out to me, because that's how we got these superstars on my panel. People wanted to learn about their workplace rights, so I reached out to them. So if you have a personal story, a love story, let us know. Also, you can follow us on multiple social media platforms. There you see. And we're also now on Roku with more announcements coming soon. I certainly appreciate Amanda Biondolino, Yvette Everhart, and Cynthia Sass of the Sass Law Firm joining me. Thank you so much, ladies. Thanks for being on the record.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody.